Okay, you can get going.
Good afternoon, everyone. We are Group 1, which comprise of Stanisha Esnard and myself, Janet Mendoza. And we will be presenting from the Leadership and Ethics book, Chapter 4, Understanding Yourself. What is meant by understanding yourself? Understanding yourself is to be aware of your own strengths and weaknesses, as well as those of others. However, an important self-awareness skill is to be aware of how you prefer to think, to relate, to learn, and to find personal meaning. Also, when you are able to articulate your beliefs and values, it helps you to understand your motivations and behaviors. Additionally, you can grow and relate to others with authenticity and credibility when you know your strengths and weaknesses. Furthermore, for leadership to be realized, there must be interpersonal relationships. However, self understanding is essential to authenticity in those relationships. It can be said that the most basic life trait that translates to leadership effectiveness is honest, authentic self awareness that is open to growth, learning, and change. An overview of the chapter. Specifically, this chapter lets you think of the things about yourself that shape your personal identity and fuel your motivations as it explores the role of self concept and self esteem. Also, how you form your values and the role of values in developing character will also be explored. Finally, it addresses your personality preferences for how you approach decisions as well as how you learn. Therefore, you must understand yourself when studying leadership. Strengths and weaknesses. Sorry. I will turn you over to my colleague, Stanisha.
Development of self for leadership. Did you know the Star Wars movies were filled with deeper meaning behind the adventurous entertainment? In The Return of Jedi, young Luke Skywalker seeks to learn the secrets of the famous Jedi Master Yoda. Luke is initially incredulous that the green creature is the master and further disappointed not to be given or taught Yoda's secrets. Yoda instead takes Luke on a journey into himself, teaching him to focus and trust his own internal power to literally move mountains. This inward journey provides a self awareness of identifying abilities, strengths, and weaknesses. The journey develops a sense of trust in yourself to be cognizant and to truly know the basis of your effectiveness. It is of great importance to recognize one's strengths and weaknesses because only then can one realize one's capability and limitation. Recognizing capacity allows leaders to commit themselves in such a way as to utilize their capability. Recognizing limitations allow for humility and the acknowledgement that leaders cannot succeed at everything. Kevin Panica is a participant in the Banner Scholar Community Service Program at the University of Richard and member of the South Asian School Alliance. The most common observation for many acknowledged leaders is that no one can teach you about yourself except you. Bennis, 1989. Four lessons from which to develop self are: you are your own best teacher, accept responsibility and blame no one, you can learn anything you want to learn, and true understanding comes from reflection of your experience. You could also find this on page 56 in the text. Leadership means self-discovery, getting a better yield out of your attributes. According to Haas and Tamerkin, 1992, page 6. Have you ever been trying to complete a task at work and think, it's not my responsibility, I will just let the leaders do it. After all, it's their job. Then you need to develop more self-leadership skills. You cannot credit or blame external factors for your lack of motivations to be a leader. Moving forward, you can ask yourself, what can I do to make a difference and become a better leader?
Strengths and weaknesses. In any situation, there would be a different mix of strengths and weaknesses by each individual. However, there can be a reverse where some strength becomes weaknesses if they are overemphasized. And on the other hand, things that you may consider to be weaknesses may be seen by others as strengths. For example, you may be a strong critical thinker who can readily find flaws in logic, and that can be terrific strength in helping your group prepare and present its position on a topic. This can also be seen as negative and blocking. If someone is presenting an idea to you and you just naturally begin to be critical instead of trying to connect and listen. If you all can recall, so explain that to us from the previous chapters about giving someone a listening ear. Always hear them out rather than being biased with your own way of thinking. Also, being humble and quiet may mean your opinion is never heard and your voice is left out of decision making. But it can also mean you are a keen listener who is very tuned in to others' thoughts. Therefore, leadership self awareness grows when you can identify your personal strengths and weaknesses in working with others towards change. So, in order to be a leader and practice good leadership, you must understand your strengths and weaknesses. Identifying your passion and strengths. According to Clifton and Nelson, 1992, you should pay attention to the things you see others doing and to your inner mind saying, oh, I would love to try that. Sometimes it's hard to identify strengths. Listening for the time you say, Listen for the time you say, I feel I've accomplished something great when I do that. Clifton and Nelson recommend that you find your strengths by trying these strategies. Please take note of these strategies. First, listen to yourself when you have done nothing well, even if no one else noticed. Second, identify the satisfaction you feel when you know something you did was terrific and gives you a feeling of well being. Third, know what things you find easy to learn quickly. Organizing your lab report, take, talking to strangers, mastering a new computer technology, reading patiently to a small child. Fourth, study your successes for clues of excellence, for glimpses of what you can be excellent, and for what things you do very well. Whether it is giving a speech or helping someone feel very special, by examining whatever your success has been, you will discover what you can do well. Developing your talents as strengths and weaknesses continues. According to Buckingham and Clifton 2001, one of our greatest assets as human beings is talent. Everyone has talent. Knowing yourself well includes knowing your talents, which is the things that you are naturally good at. Unfortunately, we often work from the deficit model of focusing on and maybe even obsessing about our weaknesses. Trying to fix our weaknesses takes away from our ability to lead and work from our talents and strengths. We do not have enough time in our lifespan to fix our weaknesses or to try to transform our weaknesses into strengths while also trying to work from our natural talent. What Buckingham and Clifton is trying to tell us, we need to be focused more on our strength rather than our weaknesses and by using our talents. Effective leaders know what they do best and apply their strengths in all aspects of their lives. This does not mean that you should ignore your weaknesses. Instead, you should be aware of those things that you do not do well and find ways to manage them so that you can be more productive and more fulfilled. One strategy of managing your weaknesses is to surround yourself with others who have talents that are different from yourself and are needed to successfully achieve results or accomplish change. If you manage your weaknesses rather than trying to fix them, you will have more time to focus on your strengths. When you play to your strengths, you are working from the philosophy of talents. According to Buckingham and Clifton. So, in other words, we most times we focus on our weaknesses, trying to better them. We barely look at the strength because in our mind we already strong in that in one avenue. So we need to focus on where we are weak. However, they are saying to us, for us to be effective leaders, we must manage our weaknesses while we focus mainly on our strengths, and that is by using our talents. Buckingham and Clifton 2001 proposed two assumptions that can guide you in your leadership. One of them, each person's talents are enduring and unique. The second, each person's greatest room for growth is in the area of his or her greatest strength. Too often, we believe that our best strategy to grow and develop is to improve our weaknesses. There was a Gallup organization conducted a survey on more than 2 million interviews over 10 years, asking high performing individuals to describe what they did that made them excel. Uh, they discovered 34 patterns or prevalent themes of human talents. Their research shows that these 34 themes of talent can explain a broad range of excellent performance. Buckingham and Clifton observed that the real tragedy of life is not that each of us doesn't have enough strength, it's that we fail to use the ones that we have. Strength is defined as consistent, near perfect performance in any activity. Buckingham and Clifton defines talent as your natural recurring patterns of thought, feeling, or behavior. So we can see it's important to know our talents in order to enhance our strengths. Leading from a philosophy of talents and strength is an outgrowth of an emerging new field called positive psychology. This new field of psychology has moved away from the clinical diagnostic approach of looking at what is wrong with an individual to paying attention to what is right with each person. Most times, people would look at the negative side and not the positive side. They dwell more on the negative side. However, here, this positive psychology is emphasizing more on the positive side. Leading from this framework will energize you and others in a positive way, open up more new possibilities, and allow you and others to do what you are best at. Here is a simple yet powerful metaphor you can use to guide your daily action and interaction. It's called the Dunn's theory of the dipper and the bucket by Rath and Clifton. Please take note. Everyone has something like an individual bucket that can get filled or empty on a regular basis by an invisible dipper. However, when your bucket gets emptied, you feel negative and let down. When your bucket is full, you feel positive. The dipper is a powerful tool in leadership, allowing us to fill another's bucket by saying positive things and focusing on what that person is good at. In other words, what we should do, we should be uplifting others rather than pulling them down. That is where the dipper is like the example. Instead of we adding to the person, we have taken away from them. You can also use the dipper to dip from someone's bucket, making that person feel diminished. Your own sense of esteem is enhanced when you use the dipper to fill someone's bucket. So what the theory is telling us that you can help someone by filling their bucket, not just your own bucket, but theirs. However, by filling someone else's bucket or enhancing that person, you yourself will your self-esteem and your enhancement will be excel. When you fill your own buckets and others, you are affirming your own and others' strengths and talents. Take note, by helping someone, your strength and talent will be affirmed. Thinking about what you do best, then think about how you feel when you receive recognition for a job well done. You were probably motivated to continue doing what you did because you were good at it and you enjoyed doing it. When someone filled your bucket, it probably made you feel good about yourself. Organizational research has shown that when you have opportunities to do what you are best at doing, and when you are recognized for that, you will experience more meaning and satisfaction in what you are doing, and your productivity will increase as a result. According to Buckham and Clifton, leading from your talents and strength will keep your bucket filled. So you're focusing on your talents to enhance your strength and your bucket will be filled. Tanisha.
Strengths and weaknesses. All of us can learn to manage our weaknesses. Some think that you can work on your weaknesses, but you cannot turn your weaknesses into strengths. However, the goal is to manage our weaknesses so the strengths can be freed to develop and become so powerful they make the weaknesses irrelevant. Clifton and Nelson, 1992, pages 73. A person can either manage their weaknesses so that they do not repress other strengths or overcome them and turn them into strengths. Weaknesses can cause you to function poorly, so therefore it needs to be tackled directly. Even though one is aware of their strengths, they should never ignore their weaknesses. Instead, they should find ways to manage them. Anybody know any of these people here? Hello.
Yes,
Tom
I do.
Cruise?
Um, Keanu Reeves, Whoopi Goldberg, Albert Einstein, someone called Tom Cruise earlier on, and Orlando Bloom.
Orlando Bloom.
Okay, right. So they are listed at the side there. And what these people have in common is that they all cope with the dyslexia. They struggle to be quick readers or accurate spellers, but all learn to manage those weaknesses and found ways to prevent them from blocking their strengths. A student observed that she taught herself to be a terrible speaker, but she enjoyed the class discussions and had fun arguing her points. She clearly had a talent that could help her manage her weaknesses. One of her classmates pointed out how those skills related. What she perceived as a weakness was viewed differently by others. So she thinking that, she real weak in something and somebody thinking, well, no, you're not weak in that, you're doing good at it and stuff like that. Assessing your strengths and weaknesses is critical to self-awareness. Conger and Benjamin 1999, Lee and King 2001. John W. Gardner, 1990, tells a story of sitting beside Martin Luther King Jr. at a seminar on education. The first presentation was entitled, "First Teach Them to Read." After observing the title, King whispered to Gardner, "First teach them to believe in themselves." Pages 10. How you think and feel about yourself is the energy that fuels your motivation. Self-concept is how we objectively describe ourselves. Usually it is based on our roles and attributes. Example, I am a creative person with musical abilities. Self-esteem is the subjective element of how you feel about yourselves. Example, you may say, I am a creative person with musical abilities, but I am unskilled socially and uncomfortable around those in authority. I feel proud of my musical and creative skills and feel disappointed in myself for not being more socially skilled. Self-awareness would lead to having an accurate self-concept. Honoring your strengths and addressing your weaknesses are essential first steps towards higher self-esteem. Self-esteem is enhanced if you can identify your strengths and weaknesses and know that you are growing and progressing in the areas you want to improve in. High self-esteem is a result of valuing your self-concept. Low self-esteem may mean you expect something better or different than you feel. Self-confidence is the ability to know that you can rely on your strengths, competencies, and skills in many contexts in which you find yourself. Accepting ourselves is perhaps one of the hardest life tasks. Realizing that you cannot change something about yourself is a step towards higher self-esteem.
Understanding yourself. What makes you the way you are? How much of your perception, values, temperament, personality, and motives come from the way you were raised, the influence of your surroundings, and your contextual environment? How much of the way you are is inborn or genetic? Debates have raged. Debates have raged for years whether to attribute, next slide please, Tanisha. Debates have raged for years over whether to attribute human behavior to nature, which is socialization, or nature, heredity. Becoming aware of the influence of either nature or nurture is your own development. It's in your own development is essential to understanding yourself. In other words, they're saying we can we can understand ourselves, but we have different aspects. We can be nurtured into certain ways, or we can inherit it through our genes. For example, you may be tall and may have learned that some people find you imposing. They assume you will be outgoing and aggressive, even though you are quiet and shy. Or you may be small, but learn that people react eventually to the quality of what you have to say. Some of us would have probably observed that usually when somebody is very short in stature, they are more they're more vocal. Their voice is more is heard more, so they actually come off as a big person or a tall person. I think probably psychological because they know that they're so small. They usually have a wider, a larger voice. Or you may be small, but have learned that people, right? Sure. Some might even say, you seem bigger than your height. Just what I was just saying. You may have learned to be rational or thoughtful or funny or anxious. Regardless of how you come to be the way you are, you can intentionally choose to develop desired traits or skills. So, what they're saying, we can choose how we want to be, not because it may be genetic or we may be nurtured into it. We have a choice of how we want to be. You cannot change your height or some other genetic attribute, but you can address many of the things you have learned by bringing them into your awareness. Although you cannot always change the way others view you because they bring their own biases and attributes, you can at least be authentic as you try to be the person you would like to be. So, in other words, be yourself. Don't try to be someone else because other people want you to be like that. Discussing your self-awareness is a form of psychological study of individuality. If you feel uncomfortable with the concept of individuality, it could be because describing human perception or behavior in categories or types make you feel boxed in or stereotyped. You may feel constrained or categorized. You may also feel uncomfortable because focusing on your own needs or on yourself is considered selfish or inappropriate in your family or culture. What they're trying to tell us that because we were cultured one way or nurtured in one way, we may be focusing on our needs and ourselves, and it may come off as selfishness, but that is the way we were cultured. We hope that you will instead welcome the opportunity for personal insights by reviewing the ways scholars understand the ranges of human behavior. By knowing how others respond, you can assess how their response is like or unlike your own. For example, if you have had a death in your family or the loss of someone you love, you may find comfort in knowing that there are predictable stages in the grief process for many people, such as denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. And that your personal reactions are very normal, according to Kubler-Ross, 1970. Because you are unique, however, you may find your grief reaction to be more pronounced or less severe than Kubler-Ross model suggests, based on such factors as how close you were to the person who died, the comfort you receive from your family, or your religious practices. What they're saying is that we all react differently in situations. For example, a funeral. Some of us we grieve different. Some may be angry, some will go into depression, some would block it off actually. Like myself, I usually blank off. After a funeral, I switch off totally as if nothing happened. That's my way of dealing with it. I don't even go to memorials because I believe that is just enacting the whole emotions and I cannot deal with it. So for me to survive, I just blank off at after funerals. I throw away the handouts that I get in the funeral and all these stuff. I just blank off. Maybe that's my way of protecting myself from being too emotional. Some of us may do the same, right? Whatever the phenomena being presented in various theories about human behavior, you can connect with what is most like you or least like you to better understand yourself and to see how others might be similar or different from you. Factors that shapes your identity continue. Several central salient characteristics have probably made you the person you are and the person you will become as you age. Consider how your ethnic, racial, and cultural background has made a difference and shaped the way you are. How do you believe or behave different because you are a man or a woman? How has your sexual orientation influenced your attitude and behavior? How does your age influence your interests and views? Do you have specific abilities or disabilities that shape your perceptions or skills? How has your birth order, position, your family influence your development? What significant role do you have that brings responsibility that shape your decision? Being a son or a daughter, a volunteer, a parent, an office manager, a school teacher, or an athlete? How has your sense of spirituality shaped your worldview? How important is religion in guiding your thinking? How has your family's socio-economic status influenced your development and your views of leadership? Just to pause for a second here, the part where the birth order, sometimes it do affect others. Because for instance, you may you may have a brother or sister before you, then you were born, your parents gave that first person a lot of attention because that was the only child at the time. Then you came in as the second child. Yes, you were the baby, you got some attention, but they will always have that first love. The third child came. Let's say it's just three in the family. The third child came, and all attention goes to this baby. But there's still that first love up there. The middle child usually is defined. They don't get that attention as the first and the second. And this is what they are talking about here, your birth order. Those are some of the factors that shape our identity. Some people react differently because they believe that their parent love the other child more than them, right? Individuals may do things differently because they are male or female, old or young, Irish, Catholic, Jew, or Muslim. Mapping your personal context must include many elements that contribute to your sense of identity. We believe the capacity for leadership is within each of you. As we note in chapter 2, as Sir explained to most of us in the previous chapters, where leadership is it's not born, it is um, you learn to be a leader. Many observers of leadership agree that leaders are made, not born, and that everyone has a leader within, according to Haas and Tamakin, 1992. Meaningful interaction and effective leadership processes can result if individuals are aware of their own motivation and where others are coming from. The leader within you may be willing to assume positional leadership role or may be more comfortable with active participant roles. Either way, whether you within you is the capacity to make a difference. So they're saying, just as we learned in the previous chapters, that you can be a leader whether you're in charge or if you are a participant. Stanisha. Values, beliefs, ethics, and character. As difficult as it may be to determine how characteristics like your gender, ethnicity, or religion influence the way you think and act, it is even more complicated and important to identify the values and beliefs that lead to your ethical behavior and build your character. Among the hardest things to articulate are the values that guide actions. If your actions and thoughts are a mystery to you, you may not have adequately examined your own value system. Beliefs shapes values, which influence thoughts and actions. If you can articulate your values, then you are likely aware of the principles and beliefs that serve as your guides. Contrasts in value systems are rarely as clear as when, for example, this is a little scenario about Star Trek. Most of us would have known about the movie Star Trek. So, Mr. Spock dispassionately says to Bones, the surgeon on the USS Enterprise, "You are too emotional, Doctor. That is not logical." Bones exploded and shouts back, "Mr. Spock, how can you be half human and not have 1 ounce of feeling in you?" Each of us has preferences in how we construct our own value system. So what is happening here? Even though Mr. Spock is part human, which he's supposed to have some emotions, he chose to have his own. Chose to have his own emotions. He has his own preferences, but Mr. Bones cannot understand it because he's supposed to be human, right? You may prefer to be logical and scientific, or you may be emotional. You may prefer to be concrete, or you may just come to know that what is important by using your intuition. Knowing that you have preferences in how you construct your value system should help understand yourself and others better. No one process is preferred over others. Your process reflects how you have come to construct meaning from your experience. The discussion of value should always raise the crucial question: whose values and for what purpose? Some values, such as promise keeping and nonviolence, are so fundamental that they have been found to be norms in most civilized societies. So, because it's practiced so much, it's no longer looked at as just values, it's the norm. Understanding values becomes a central component to understanding others and to achieve a common purpose. Values and beliefs continued. So everyone, look, imagine this scene. Think about this. Shaking his head. This is a scenario. Shaking his head, Scott approaches his two friends, Khalil and Michael. I just cannot believe it, Scott laments. I just heard that James vetoed the activity fee allocation to the Student Hillel Association. I think he is biased and power hungry, and I'm quitting student government. I just won't have anything to do with student government anymore. Not with a president who does stuff like that. So this is Scott. He's getting angry because he doesn't like the way that James is doing stuff. He just hey, just wait a minute, Scott, Michael implores. I have always known James to be fair and reasonable, and I trust him. Something else must be going on that we just don't understand. He must have a reason for if he did this. And knowing him like we do, I bet it is good a good reason. There's probably more behind his decision than we can see right now. Yeah, I agree completely, Khalil adds. I know him pretty well and he's okay. Let's go talk to him. James' character and reputation for integrity among those who know him are solid and defensible. Sorry. What this scenario is about, James has his integrity and it is solid. His friends, the people who knows him, know of it. But he had to make a certain decision. However, Scott doesn't know him that well, even though he's part of the committee. And he's from his point of view, it seems as if James was being biased and not doing what he's supposed to do, right? However, when a person is known for a solid value system, grounded in integrity and authenticity, others may disagree with the decision but cannot find fault with the character of the decision maker. So there was no fault. They couldn't find the Scott thought he had a fault, but there was none because of the integrity of James. Concurrently, Scott did not know James well enough to form the opinion Michael and Khalid shared, but he did have the strength of his conviction that he would quit an organization over actions. That is also a measure of someone's integrity and is also a possible reaction to an intolerable ethical dilemma or value conflict. Values were behind these students' reaction. So, in a nutshell, James had his integrity was solid. However, Scott has his own integrity as well because even though he did not know James, he was judging James. What he was perceiving seemed wrong, and he stood his grounds. He held on to his integrity and what he believed in. And what they're showing, trying to tell you here, the both persons have integrity, even though one came off a bit negative, but it is there. Stanisha.
Character and ethical behavior. Integrity in relationships is central to the value systems needed among people working together. Authenticity is rooted in action that is both true and real in ourselves and in the world. Terry, 1993, pages 111 to 112. Whether framed as integrity, authenticity, or credibility, the very core of your character is central to sincerely linking with others in the spirit of community to work towards change. When asked what leadership qualities he looked for in leaders in the U.S., Army Desert Storm retired General Normand Short-Squad said, probably far more important to me than competence was character, integrity, ethics, and morality. I looked for people who were willing to serve a cause and were what I would call selfless leaders rather than self-serving leaders. Ren 1994, pages 2. Trust has been crucial in my relationship with others. If I don't think I can trust someone, then I won't pursue a relationship with a person. I think trust has to be earned through consistency and honesty. In building relationship with others, I try to never lie and always be there for the person. Being faithful to a person breaks down barriers and builds trust. Being trustworthy also make others feel like you are being trustworthy also make others feel like you are someone they can follow. Without trust, I don't think a meaningful relationship is possible. Erin Flugman is a volunteer leader of Young Life, president of CAS, and a tutor at the University Writing and Communication Center. She studies English at East Tennessee State University. A person of character promotes ethical decision making and expects ethical behavior from others. The Josephson Institute of Ethics proposed 6 pillars of character that are enduring and indispensable to ethical leadership practices. These pillars are trustworthiness, respect, responsibility, fairness, caring, and citizenship. Jones and Lucas, 1994, page 4. So a person of good character is trustworthy, meaning they're honest, they has integrity, keeps promises, they're loyal, they treat people with respect, is courteous, non-violent, non-prejudiced, accepting, they're responsible, is accountable, pursues excellence, shows self-restraint, is fair, just, equitable, open, reasonable, unbiased, is caring, kind, compassionate, empathetic, unselfish, is a good citizen, law abiding, does his or her share, performs community services, and protects the environment. After a concert on campus one Friday night, 2 students were counting the ticket sales receipts. The money in the cash drawer was $120 short for the number of tickets sold. Baffled at the difference, the students turned in the account the next day and presented the problem to the student activities office. That afternoon, a third student came into the office carrying an envelope containing $120. The money had apparently come in during a ticket sale rush and had been set aside instead of being locked in the cash drawer. The office accountant clerk asked her, "Why didn't you keep the money? No one would have known." The student's quick, indignant reply was, "But I would have known, and I don't like to do things like that." Anybody know what character this person shows? Well, they could say this person shows trust and fairness. Leadership requires a special kind of dedication, a special kind of belief. I think that you must have defined for yourself a set of morals and ethical value in which you choose to make your decisions in life as you move along. Then you must be true to yourself. Shortcoff, as cited in Ren 1994, page 5. Valley Analog, 1989, that our values, beliefs, our rudders in times of permanent white waterings. True. See chapter 1. Self-assessments have helped me better understand myself because they allow me to evaluate my personality from an impartial perspective. Identifying habits and traits within my personality increases my understanding of how I interact with others. It also makes it easier to determine character flaws and things that I should improve in order to become a more efficient communicator and leader. Audrey K. Hicks, she attends the Florida State University and majors in international affairs with a minor in Spanish. She was the senior class president, a member of the National Board of Directors of Omicron, Delta Kappa Society, and an intern at the Florida House of Representatives. Personal style preferences. Understanding how you express your values through your preferred interactions or decision making helps you understand yourself and serves as a bridge to exploring diversity within groups. You may see yourself as a caring person, committed to being fair and just, yet you are puzzled as to why some people perceive you as judgmental or rigid. Understanding your personality preferences helps explain how you function in the world and how you are perceived by others. Psychological type. How humans adapt to the world around them is different for each one because of personality preferences. The study of personality consumes the content of many psychological courses, books, and specialized journals. You are so accustomed to the way you view things, get things done, interact, and make decisions that you perhaps cannot imagine doing them differently. It is essential to realize that you have the capacity to broaden your approaches, but the first step is to identify them. Carl Jung, 1923, identified four core functions of human adaptation that he called personality, archetypes, or temperament types. These four functions include how we relate to the world, perceive the world, make judgments, and make decisions. Young's typology includes four pairs of adaptive orientations that are diametrically opposed to each other. This combination describes where we get our energy, extrovert or introvert, how we gather information from the world around us, sensing or intuition, how we prefer how we prefer to process that information, feeling or thinking, and how we prefer to make decisions, judging or perceiving. The first of these four core functions concerns our mode of relating to the world. There are differences between those who are orientated to the outer world, extroverts, and those who prefer their own inner world, introverts. Some examples of knowing an extrovert are they prefer the outer world of people and things. They do their best thinking out loud and having conversations with each other. They get energy from being around others. Some examples of an introvert. They are more orientated to their inner world of feelings and ideas. They prefer to think things through and reflect before forming or stating their opinions. They do their best work through internal reflection. They gain energy by creating private space, even when in a crowd. They may do very well in highly interactive settings, but leave those settings drained of energy and need private time to renew. The use of these words is sometimes confusing because extroverts does not mean outgoing and introverts does not mean shy and withdrawn. The terms refer instead of to a preferred orientation to the outer or inner world. So this is the comparison between extroverts and introverts. Extroverts are like 75% of the population, while the introverts are 25% of the population. So you could say the extroverts are sociable, the introverts are territorial, the extrovert their interaction, while the introverts they concentrate. The extroverts are external, while the introverts are internal. They are the extroverts are breadth, while the introverts are depth. The extroverts are also intensive, while the introverts are intensive. The extroverts are multiplicity of relationships, while the introverts limit their relationships. The extroverts expenditure of energy, while the introverts conserve their energies. The extroverts also interest in external events, while the introverts have an interest in internal events. The second core function covers your preferences for perceiving the world around you, sensing or intuition. Sensing people are very practical and realistic, preferring the present or past to the abstraction of the future. Intuiting people are people who prefer the big picture and like to see things as a whole. People that like to project into the future, living in anticipation of how things can be done better, improved, and changed. Sensing people might say, if it's not broken, don't fix it. Whereas intuitive might say, there has to be a better way. Macaulay, 1990, pages 407. Groups need both kind of people, those grounded in reality and those who think of possibilities. So this is the chart that's showing the difference between the sensing and the intuition of the people in the population. So they will say that the sensing people, they're more experienced, and the intuition, the hunches, the sensing, they think in the past, while the intuition, they study the future. The sensing people are more realistic, while the intuition, they are speculative. The sensing people are more actual, while the intuition, they are more possible. The sensing are more down to earth, while the intuition is head and clouds. The sensing is more practical, while the intuition is ingenuity. The sensing is sensible, while the intuition is imaginative.
Personal style preferences. How we prefer to process that information, feeling, thinking, and how we prefer to make decisions, judging, perceiving. Those who prefer thinking, T, use logic and rationality. The head rules rather than the heart. The third core function is the mode of judging or thinking or feeling. Those who prefer thinking, T, use logic and rationality. The head rules rather than the heart. Thinking approaches through critical thinking, analysis, and reliance on the objective scientific method is rewarded in schools system. Feeling types people prefer to make judgments that account for relationships and the importance of human values and beliefs, with an emphasis on personal friendship. Those who prefer feeling, the Fs, may find those who prefer thinking, the Ts, to be cold and too objective, whereas Ts may find Fs too emotional and unable to stand firm on decisions. This is the only scale that shows a gender pattern, with men making 60% of the T preference group and women making up 60% of the F preference group. Misunderstandings that are on occasion attributed to gender differences may actually reflect personality differences. And we have these tables actually are from the Myers-Briggs type indicator, the theory of psychological types. The thinking here, the keyword shows the thinking versus the feelings, and the population that we use are 50% each. So thinking people are more objective while feeling is subjective. They have principle, the thinking people. The feeling people have values. The thinking policies, feelings have social values. Thinking people are impersonal, whereas feeling people are personal. Thinking has categories, and the feeling person has harmony. Thinking people, they have firmness, and feelings people are, has persuasion. The, the thinking people will they are an analysis, and the feeling people are sympathy. The fourth core function involves how you prefer to make decisions by judging or perceiving. Those with judging preferences prefer order and emphasize resolving issues and making decisions to create order. People who use J or judging preferences like tying up loose ends and seeking closure. They like clear beginnings, deadlines, and endings. Persuas- Perceiving type people prefer to keep things open ended by gathering as much information as possible and being flexible. People with P preferences handle ambiguity well, are known to go with the flow, and are comfortable leaving things open ended or unresolved. Those with J preferences may seem close minded or driven, and those with P preferences may seem unfocused and have a hard time getting anything done. And here we have a table that shows us the difference between the judging and the perceiving. Those are the keywords. Same 50% of population. However, the judging people are more settled, where perceiving people, things are pending. Judging people are fixed, perceiving are flexible. Judging people plan ahead. Perceiving people, they adapt as you go. The judging people, they run one's own life. Perceiving people, lets life happen. Like, hey, Sarah, Sarah, whatever, whatever. Judging are decisive, where perceiving are tentative. Judging people has urgency. Perceiving people, oh, there's plenty of time. They can't be concerned with what's happening. They do, like, if they have a exam coming up, they will study the night before the exam. Whatever. They have plenty time. Judging people, they have deadlines. Where perceiving people will say, what deadline? I have plenty time. I could finish that before. That's the difference between the two types of persons. We each have developed preferences of how we must comfortably perceive and judge our worlds. These peers help us understand ourselves and others, according to Myers 1980. Your four-letter composite profile is a combination of the E or the I, the S or the N, the T or the F, and the J or the P. Please refer to the slides 50, 53, and 56 and 58 for the keywords that provided additional explanation of these preferences. Which set seems most like you? We can and do use all 8 of these processes, but generally prefer a consistent pattern. If you are right-handed, you could write with your left hand if you had to, but you prefer your right hand. If you are an introvert, you can and do enjoy people and good conversation. In other words, they're saying that we chose to be one way, but indeed we can also be another way. For instance, I could use myself as an example. I call myself right-handed because I write with my right hand. However, I discovered recently I had an injury to my left shoulder, and every time the shoulder will hurt, it's because I was using the left hand so much. And then I realized that I was actually using my left hand more than my right hand, thinking that I am right-handed, you know? So what they're saying here, we have preferences, we choose certain things, right? Approximately two-thirds of men prefer thinking, and two-thirds of women prefer feeling. However, among female graduate students, engineering students, and business executives, the majority prefer thinking approaches. Among men in the arts, counseling, and some health fields, those with feeling preferences predominate. The general population contains about 55% judging types, but studies of leaders shows this to be this to range upward to 91%, clearly indicating the preferences among positional leaders to reach closure and get decisions made, according to Macaulay 1990. Leaders come from all grouping of preferences, but clearly certain patterns of preferences may exist in some careers or fields that draw on those preferences as strengths. Macaulay asserts, from the type perspective, one would not ask the question, what type is the best leader? Rather, one would ask, how does each type show leadership? So in other words, what they're saying to us is that the preferences, we choose to be one way, but we can be leaders in any one of these preferences. You don't have to be a certain preference in order to be a leader. Anyone could be a leader, regardless of if you're introvert, you're extrovert, you're judging, you're sensing, right? This is what they're trying to tell us. And moving on, this is the Myers-Briggs theory that the type indicators that we just showed you all on the on the table, right? We refer to it as MBTI. This theory of psychological type has been widely used in leadership assessment to understand self, others, and the dynamics of relationship and leadership processes. But it is not without flaws. There is some indication that type is not stable, that you can change your pattern over time. The action oriented extrovert may become a more contemplative and reflective introvert later in her life. Cause on the MBTI may be related to the context you have in mind when you complete the instructions. Assessments like the MBTI are occasionally used inappropriately. It would be inappropriate in hiring decisions to assume that someone can be no different from her four-letter scores, when actually she may be well developed in using several preferences. However, the concept of personality preferences is helpful in understanding ourselves as a framework for your own self-exploration. Becoming aware of your personality preferences helps move your future towards self-awareness. As awareness grows, you begin to see the need to build other skills and to have a wide range of responses in decision making and your relations with others. A useful application occurs when you realize that the conflict you have with another may be because of a clash in preferences, which can lead to more understanding ways of relating. So what they're saying, sometimes we may have a little personality clash with somebody, maybe your friend, your spouse, or your significant other, and it's just because of the difference in preferences that is causing it. You will then find it comfortable to say, well, what they're saying here now is after you understand yourself and you realize what your preferences are, it is okay now. You can say, sorry, I know it seems like I'm jumping the gun, but I just do my best thinking out loud. Or I know I am asking lots of detailed questions, but it helps me understand the bigger picture. Or these were interesting ideas presented today. I am just not yet ready to decide. I need to think about this overnight. Can we decide at our meeting tomorrow? So that what they're saying, once you understand yourself and you know your preferences, and you realize, oh, you may come out offensive because you having personality clashes, you can now apologize and explain the reason why you reacted that way or so, right? And the chapter summary. This chapter discussed some important aspects of your self-awareness that become key to the understanding yourself as a participant and as a leader. The chapter explored ways to examine your strengths and weaknesses with a goal of developing your talent and having a realistic self-concept with healthy self-esteem and self-confidence. We then revise basic values that are essential in a person of character, building on the psychological and educational approaches to leadership. We present some models to assess your personality, presence, preferences, and your learning preferences. Some of those models were the Dons and the Meyer Briggs. So, in conclusion, leadership entails being aware of your strengths and weaknesses, as well as that, excuse me, as well as that the people around you, that of the people around you. Specifically, you must manage your weaknesses and use your talent to enhance your strengths. Also, in order to possess self confidence, you must have good self esteem. Furthermore, your values, belief, ethics, and character must reflect your integrity so that it can be solid and defensible. Finally, your personal preferences will guide your adaptation to situations. Therefore, understanding yourself is the primary factor for becoming a good leader. Are there any questions? These are our references. Anyone? Any questions? Everybody understood what understanding yourself is about? If we could recap, you must manage your weaknesses, know your talents in order to have strength, look at your preferences. Anybody? Any questions?
Okay, if there are no questions, then we
If-
could
if-
close the recording.
yes, thank you. This has been our presentation of understanding self. Thank you.